You're listening to 10 Points, a podcast with your hosts, Ash and Nicholas, where all the talk is Canadian Highlander, our favorite format from the best trading card game ever, Magic the Gathering.
Hey everyone, it's me, Nicholas.
And me, Ash.
And today we're going to be doing a deck doctor where someone gives us a deck and we're going to make changes that we think would be useful for the deck.
But before we do that, we need to talk about our best card from, and today the set we're looking at is Invasion. So Nick, what do you got for us from Invasion?
So I think while it is rather boring, I think that probably the card that sees the most play in the most decks is Opt. It's just a really good cantrip, and when you're looking for cantrips, it's one of the cantrips.
Yep, it is definitely a solid role player. There were a couple interesting cards in this set, most of them very specific for archetypes, like Elvish Champion, for example. But another more commonly seen one is Fact or Fiction. Most decks that want to play a 4-mana spell that draws them cards play this as their first or second one. I think this has fallen off a little bit in recent years, but it definitely used to be a house.
Yeah.
Still sucks to get it cast against you.
Yeah, I think it's still decent, still has a little bit of breath in its lungs, but definitely doesn't see as much play as it used to.
Right. So, do you want me to introduce this topic, or do you want to?
You can.
Okay. So, as Nicholas mentioned, we're doing a deck doctor today. We're going to be working on a deck list that was sent in from a community member. Actually, funny enough, he requested some help with his deck list on the Discord, and then I sent out an announcement seeing if anyone had deck lists they wanted doctored, and we looked at a couple different submissions, and this one seemed like it had the most for us to work with right now. So we might get to other ones in the future, but this is the one we're going to be doing today. This list was sent in to us, but I don't want to get his Discord tag wrong. It's the IDEG. I have no idea how to pronounce that. I'm not even going to try. I don't know how many letters or how many syllables it is. I don't know. I'm not going to try.
Theodeg.
Thiedeg.
Yeah,
the IDEG. I don't know.
The IDEG.
The list that was sent to us is a Sultai pod toolbox kind of deck. We're gonna put both. We're gonna put two links in the description. We're gonna put one, which is a copy of the exact list that he sent us, and then we're gonna put a second one that is post editing. So you can kind of see both of them. We're looking to kind of, trim some chaff on this, tune it up a little bit, adjust some numbers to whatever you think is right. So Nick, do you want to give a bit of an overview of what we're going to be looking to do before we start getting into the nitty gritty of it?
Yeah, I mean, like Ash said, we're going to kind of just go through the deck one part at a time and just recommend changes that we think would be good. We're coming into this pretty fresh without having looked into the deck a whole lot. But I think both of us have already noticed a couple of things that we would change. Probably starting with the fact that there's only 33 lands.
We'll get to that in 1 second, but I just want to say that the original post that he put on the Discord said he's got a Sultai value pod list that I need to make a few cuts to, and I'm not 100% sure on the points either. I reached out separately and said, hey, we're doing deck doctoring deal. I'm going to put this on our considering list. And there was a good yes from that. So we're probably going to do a little more than just adjust, other than just make some cuts. The list is currently 106 cards, but we're going to do a bit more than make cuts and change points. We're probably going to do a bit of a soft overhaul. But as Nicholas said, number one priority is adding more lands. We do not have nearly enough lands in this version right now.
So do we want to start with the lands, start with the points, start with making cuts?
I would probably start with anything we just think doesn't belong in the deck. So a few things that stand out to me. I don't super love Malakir Rebirth in decks that aren't playing Fury or Solitude. It's good with Grief, but I don't know if it does enough else, especially, we have... Well, Malakir Rebirth maybe is one that can stay, because it flips to be a land.
Yeah.
But like, there's Undying Evil and Undying Malice,
and Supernatural Stamina.
Stamina's in here too. Oh,
yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I think those are already fairly iffy by themselves. Like, if you're getting enough value out of the cards, and when you're not playing Fury in your deck, like, their best case scenario is like turn 1 Grief, which is pretty good, but not worth putting 4 cards in your deck that could potentially find you with a lot of really awkward hands.
Yeah, I think it's okay to leave the Malakir Rebirth, because at the end of the day you can play it like a land.
Yeah.
And like, that's fine. But I'm gonna go ahead and cut the other 3. Another thing that stands out to me is a bit awkward is Collected Company.
I was gonna say the same thing.
If there's a deck in the format where you want Collected Company, this is probably close to it, but this kind of deck kind of prides itself on just everything being good by itself, and then tutoring for the key pieces you want. And Collected Company, it doesn't find you the key pieces you want, and it also is really good at finding you mana dorks.
Yeah,
I think
I've
it's
played
better
a
in
lot
like
of creature combo in Canlander, and Coco. It's just not the same. Like, in Modern, when you're playing 4 ofs the cards that you want and only 60 cards, the odds of it finding you the card that you want are much better. In Canlander, like, you're paying 4 mana, and a lot of the time you're gonna end up with like a Birds of Paradise, and like, if you're lucky, maybe like a Baleful Strix or something.
It's also really hard to justify playing it in a deck where your other 4 drops are under Mountain Adventurer.
Yeah.
You know? Like, if you're playing white and you could hit a White Plume or a Skyclave Apparition off of it, like, maybe, like, you have a better time convincing me if you could hit White Plume off of it in your deck. But I just think that's going to be tough here. Another thing that I haven't really seen this one in Canlander yet is Body Launderer. It's 2 black for a 3/3 Death Touch, ETB, it connives. Oh, I'm sorry. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, it connives. So you can trigger it by sacking stuff. And then when it dies, you return another non-rogue creature with equal or lesser power from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's kind of like a weird, when it dies, it karma guides something smaller. And also helps you connive and kind of has a grindy game to it. I don't know, like, it's weird that it can't hit rogues, which doesn't really matter except for it's there so you can't loop it with itself. That's why that is.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I don't think the rogue thing really matters.
I don't like it.
It can't get Op Agent. That matters.
But it's also only with the equal or lesser power. I just don't think it is consistently good enough. So I would cut that. Another thing I would cut is Aven Heartstabber. First of all, getting 5 or more mana values in your graveyard is really difficult as it is. And then even when you do, it's still, like, the upside of achieving this very difficult thing is still not, like, amazing. Like, don't get me wrong,
I'd rather just play Baleful Strix.
Yeah, like a 2 mana 3/3 flyer, sure, it's pretty good, but it's not good enough to justify the cost of having to acquire 5 or more mana values in your bin.
What about Hostage Taker? I don't hate Hostage Taker. It's just not what it used to be, but I could be convinced to leave it in.
Yeah, I think
interesting stuff.
Unless we're looking for more cuts, I wouldn't mess with Hostage Taker. There's a lot of, which I guess we should preface, we're gonna make a lot of changes to the deck. That doesn't mean that, like, we're absolutely right. Like, people play the format differently. Like, we're looking at this obviously with our perspective, but like, I've seen a lot of lists that I've been like, that's not at all how I would build this deck, and then like it can put up results. So don't necessarily think that we're like poo-pooing on the deck or whatever. Like, these are just our opinions on certain cards. I'm not a fan of Deeproot Wayfinder. I think
really isn't that? Hold on, this is the land one, right? So it puts the land into play.
It has to deal combat damage to a player, and it's a 2/3 without any form of evasion or protection or anything. Like, I think if you're paying 2 mana for a creature that has to deal combat damage to a player, and then even when it does, the upside is like, it's fine, but it's
a 2 mana 2/3.
I mean, yeah, that body doesn't necessarily impress me that much.
Okay, I'm not gonna fight you on it. Something that I'm looking at is subtlety and force of will. There's not very many blue cards in this deck, especially not ones that you really want to be pitching. So I'm not so sure that you want to be playing those.
Yeah, I definitely don't like subtlety, and I personally wouldn't play force of will.
I just think it's going to be stuck in your hand more often than not.
Yeah.
Like most of there's just so little that you can pitch to it. I just don't think that's where you're at.
And there's so many really good cards in these colors for this kind of deck that I think you don't need to be playing Force of Will when you could be playing, like, you could just replace that with a card that fits into the deck really well.
Sure. What do you think about Phyrexian Delver, also known as Black Karmic Guide? It ETB cast reanimate.
It's much worse than Karmic Guide.
I mean, this one doesn't have Echo. That's pretty cool.
First of all, it hurts you. It's 5 mana. It doesn't have evasion. Like Karmic Guide. I mean, first of all, one of the main reasons that Karmic Guide is even good is because of the pod chain.
Yeah,
but like also, yeah, you can't play that here. But also sometimes, like, you're just tutoring it to get something back. But this, it's not part of a pod chain. It's 5 mana reanimate with the body not being terribly relevant. So I'm not a huge fan of it.
And then I think the only other 2 cards that are sticking out to me as probable cuts are the Ophiomancer.
Yeah, I would also cut that.
And the Plague Engineer.
Yeah, I don't like Plague Engineer. I also don't like Master of Death very much.
I think that's meant to synergize with Survival of the Fittest.
Survival of the Fittest synergizes with itself. You don't need things that particularly synergize with it, because you just, for 1 mana, you discard a creature that you don't need, and you get the best creature in any given situation.
And I guess, but like, I also like Master of Death's. It's a recursive 3/1 that surveils. I'm not like obsessed with it. I just think it's interesting. Yeah,
I'm not a huge fan of it, but maybe it's okay. I'm not also a huge fan of Urborg Lurgoyf. I don't know if we necessarily. When this came out, I like really wanted it to be good, and no matter how many times I read it,
it's good in Dredge.
Well, this isn't Dredge.
I mean, it kind of has some dredgy properties. You're right. It's not Dredge. You're right.
So there's no Dredge creatures.
Okay, sure. Okay, I think that's all the big stuff that I was pretty quickly wanting to cut.
Yeah, I've still got a few more, actually.
What do you want to cut?
I don't see the synergy in having Viscera and Carrion Feeder. Like, I'm maybe that's what, like, all the Undying Evils and stuff are for, is like those, but I don't see a situation in which you're wanting to be sacking your creatures to Viscera or Carrion Feeder.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't even see those.
Yeah, like, I really don't see anything, like, maybe Ophiomancer, kind of, but
I guess.
Like, paying 1 mana for a creature, like, especially Viscera. Yeah, no, I don't like either of them. I don't see any reason to be playing them, as far as I can tell.
Okay, what do you think about Braids?
I don't really like it. The only, like, I Braids is something I would not put in my deck, but
It's better
the
with
reason
Ophiomancer in play.
I guess, but the reason I didn't say anything about it is because, like, if you have extra mana dorks laying around, it's decent, and the fact that it's
great with Oko. Make food, sack your food, make them sack an artifact.
Yeah. That's true. So, like, I don't hate braids. Like, I think that's perfectly fine to leave in. Kind of the same thing as Sausage Shaker. Unless we're actually actively looking for a cut, I think braids is fine.
Okay, Aether Channeler is like, I don't know, I feel like it's a bit iffy, but you get to do some cool stuff with it. You get to, like, buy your stuff back.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, yeah, you're probably not bouncing your own stuff, I guess, unless you're really hellbent. But
do we want to play any blink effects? Like, we're kind of taking out the black quote unquote blink effects.
There's not really great blink effects in
what's the 1 mana blue one?
You're not playing that.
Okay, not even Ghostly Flicker?
I kind of like having a Ghostly Flicker, and the reason is that if you have
Ewit.
Yeah, like Ewit plus a creature, it's like recursive, and also you get more justification off of it. Like, the problem with, like, the 1 mana blue one, or like a lot of the other blink effects, is that you're spending a card in your hand to get an ETB off of a creature. And so if you're only getting 1 ETB, like, a lot of the time it's
not
decent, but it's not super worth it. That's why, like, Ephemerate's really good, because you get 2 ETBs, and, like, Ghostly Flicker, it's definitely worse than Ephemerate, but obviously we're not in white. But you still get 2 ETBs. You're trading 1 card still. It is more mana, which is irrelevant, but you're still only trading 1 card for more ETB stuff.
So I'm looking at a decent number of things that care about our graveyard. I'm looking at 2 reanimation spells, that, you know, Tarmogoyf, we have Fiend Artisan, what else? There's a couple other things. Liliana Last Hope kind of cares. Recurring Nightmare is a big one. And we kind of cut some self-mill stuff, but we're not looking to play, like, Thought Scourers, are we? Do you think? Or any, like, Tainted Indulgence, something like that?
Definitely not.
Okay, so are we really milling ourselves at all?
I don't see any reason to. Like I said, I've played a lot of, like, this very similar kind of deck, and if you are finding yourself in a situation in which you don't have creatures in your graveyard that you want to reanimate, you're probably winning. Like, that means they're on the battlefield. And
sure, I guess that makes sense. Okay. Well, I guess, are we looking at any tutors that are missing? I see Worldly Tutor, Survival, Pod.
Yeah, I think we should be on, man, why can't I think of the name? Finale of Devastation, and the new battle, I think, is also pretty good.
Do you remember what it's called?
Invasion of Ikoria?
Alright, let's see if you're right. You're right. Okay, we probably are looking at Gaia's Cradle then.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. We're probably still going to want to add 3 to 4 more lands. Or how many lands do you want to be on? 37?
How many dorks are we on?
A decent number. I don't know about crop rotation amongst our points. Well, actually, putting Cradle in makes it better.
I don't like crop rotation.
Okay. Even with Cradle in here? I mean, like, I'm not saying it needs to be here. I'm just kind of thinking of options.
Amen. Which, yeah, that was another thing I was going to talk about. Right now, the deck is playing Primeval Titan without any payoffs. Like,
So we should put a field in there. And
yeah.
it currently has only snow-covered basics for the sake of this Ice Fang quad, although I think we can just cut one of each of them to put in a regular basic.
Yeah.
I feel like setting up our Field of the Dead, which we're Primeval Tightening into play, is just going to be better than our Ice Fang maybe having Death Touch.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we definitely should not be on prime time if there is no big payoff. Like right now, the best payoff is like Wasteland.
I think we want Field of the Dead. I think that was just an oversight.
Yeah.
I also think that we always talk about how sometimes the best tutor target is a creature with haste, and we should be playing Questing Beast.
Yeah, I like Questing Beast.
And I'll fix those basics as well.
Yeah. And like the reason for Questing Beast, like these kinds of decks, like you're on a lot of creature tutors, and so you kind of want that's why they call it a toolbox deck. You want a tool for every job. So, like, if your opponent's, like, on the verge of death, or they've got, like, a planeswalker and, like, some small blockers that they're keeping back, it's really nice to just have that tool in your box. Like, sure, it doesn't have an ETB, but it, like, just kills them.
Its ETBs deal 4 damage to you and your planeswalkers.
Yeah.
That's its ETB effect. Okay, so I got one of each basic in there. Down one snow basic of each. Leaving the overflow to be snow basics, of course. And
yeah.
We can adjust those if we're looking to put in more non-basic lands, though I don't know what exactly we'll need. I put a Fielded in there. Castle Aquaine seems fine, I guess.
I don't like it. I've tried it a few times, and it always seems like too much mana with too much downside. Like, it's
one of those things that if you just get Hellbent, it does something.
Yeah, I guess the fact that you're in 3 colors means that it's a little more reasonable.
3 colors? What do you mean?
I mean, so, like, we're in 3 colors.
As opposed to 4?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because, I mean, a lot of the time, creature toolbox decks are, like, 4.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
It's another land with a different name. So let's see. We also have Neoform as a tutor that I wasn't thinking about. So that's good. Eldritch Evolution, I think, is here?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think the only tutors that I saw that were missing were the 2 that I mentioned.
Yeah, we got those in here. So we have, I guess we should, this is more of a toolbox. It's called Value Pod. It's a toolbox deck. It's less of a combo deck. Do we have any more tools we're missing from our toolbox? Like we have, we have Orcish Spellmasters, Opposition Agent, Leovold, Hull Breacher, Eternal Witness, Endurance. Scavenging Ooze may be a good add.
Yeah, I like Scavenging Ooze. I stopped counting dorks earlier. 2.
We have Dorothy Voidwalker as another graveyard handler. Haywire Might is pretty good.
Yeah, it does stuff. 6 dorks.
Do we want something else that shatters or like disenchants when it comes in? Do we want a Rex Age?
I don't think we want Rex Age. I do think that. So he's on Cankerbloom and Haywire Might.
Oh, I didn't see the Cankerbloom.
I would be on. Man, why can't I think of the card's name?
I don't know.
The 2-mana Day Night one.
Oh, Outland Liberator?
Yeah, I would be on Outland Liberator over at least one of those. Like, Cankerbloom is...
Cankerbloom's pretty solid.
I'm trying to see, like, what you're proliferating on. You've got 3 Planeswalkers.
Well, it's always a 3/2.
I don't think
that's the thing.
And, like, the upside of the other one...
I didn't realize it when it gets to trigger whenever it attacks. If it flips. Okay, yeah. I mean you get to proliferate onto your Liliana or You can put more counters on their invasions if they play invasions.
Yeah.
You can proliferate your Orcish Bowmaster.
Yeah, I would replace Haywire Might personally.
Okay. I'm not against that. I feel like on one you don't want to be casting Haywire Might.
Yeah, like the body's not great. The 2-life isn't irrelevant, but it's not especially relevant. And the fact that it's non-creature artifact and non-creature enchantment is really annoying. Like, there's a lot of artifact creatures. And
Haywire Might says non-creature?
Yeah.
It's a good thing you're reading these cards, but I'm not doing a great job of it. Okay, I'm already liking the look of this a lot more. Oh, we have a Diabolic Intent as another sack outlet, which is notable.
Yeah, a lot of the time you're just like
sacking a dork. Or a token. Which I know we removed one of our main token generators, but I don't know if this deck needs that many tokens.
Not really. Passageway Seer is a good option.
Do you think it's better than Ravenloft Adventure, or do we just play both?
I think you probably play both, honestly. I think Saw in Half is really good.
Oh, yeah. Saw in Half Eternal Witness is just, like, kind of silly. It's really, really, really good if they can't interact with it. If you set up Eternal Witness, Saw in Half, Cankerbloom, you probably win against Paradox. Especially with a Gaia's Cradle.
Sure. To be fair, that's slightly magical Christmas landy, but I mean, like,
you have like 7 tutors for 2 of those cards.
Yeah.
And 2 more for the other ones.
Speaking of Paradox, Collector Oof is a good option if you are worried about that stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily add it without knowing the meta. Vampire Hexmage.
Right.
Because we added the battle.
And it also is a tutor target that deletes Teferis.
Yeah, so I've been on a lot of Vampire Hexmage recently in combination with Invasion of Ikoria, and I think it's really good because, like, neither one of them are bad. Invasion of Ikoria is, like, basically just another Finale of Devastation. It's a little worse, but not that much worse. And then, man, my brain. The card I literally just said we should add. Vampire Hexmage is like another tool in the toolbox. If your opponent's got an annoying Planeswalker, you just go delete it. But then sometimes for 4 mana, you just get an 8/8 that can't be effectively blocked.
Alright, how many ETB effects do we have? Baleful Strix, Icewind Coatl, Bowmasters, Uro, Eternal Witness, Endurance, Aether Channeler, Grieve, Hostage Taker. Well, ignore Hostage Taker for this bit. And then initiative cards. We could maybe consider putting in Phantom Steed. I don't know, it's a tough sell as a 4-drop, but
I don't actually even know what that does.
We also have Thragtusk, Moldritch, and Custodial Lich. Basically, you kind of get to like Splinter Twin a creature each turn.
And I'm just gonna have to look this card up. I think we should be on a Kitchen Finks as well.
Ooh, I don't know why you missed that one. So yeah, Phantom Steed. It is.
Yeah, I'm looking.
3 and a. I'm reading it to the. I'm reading it to the lovely listeners.
Keep going.
Okay, so it's 3 and a blue for a 4/3 with Flash. Flash is good. When it enters the battlefield, you exile another target creature you control until Phantom Steed leaves play. And then whenever Phantom Steed attacks, you create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of the exiled creature, except it's an illusion in addition to its other types, and you sack it in return. So, I guess it can give you a little bit of sacrifice fodder, but the main thing is you just put like a Thragtusk under it or a Moldrifter under it. You can actually evoke Moldrifter, and then in response to the sack trigger, you can flash in Phantom Steed, which is kind of nifty. But then whenever you attack with your Phantom Steed, you get a copy of it. So it's a little risky.
Is it new?
It's been around a while. It came out when the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms came out. Yeah, I mean, like, it dies to bolt, but the thing is, when it dies, you get your thing back. So, you get to, you're not losing anything besides maybe the ability to attack that turn with a creature. So, you would just flash this in at the end of their turn, so...
Yeah, I kind of like it. I didn't know that this card existed, but it's kind of cool.
It's a staple in Banty TB now.
It's Wrath Protection.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird little Wrath Protection. That's a good point.
Yeah, I like it. I think.
Yeah, so if you're saving something with an ETB effect, and then they kill this, you at the very least you get the ETB effect again.
Yeah.
Now, one thing is you do exile target creature. So if they kill the target, it kind of does nothing. But then it's a 4/3 with flash. Like,
yeah,
it's not the worst. I think it would be pretty interesting in this deck.
No, I like it. Honestly, I'm gonna like that. Should go in some of my decks.
It's also a 25-cent card.
Didn't know it existed.
Yeah, it's pretty nifty. How do I feel about Tasigur? I feel like it's like a grindy card, but your deck already is.
Yeah, I think. I don't think Tasigur fit. Like, it's a great card. Don't get me wrong.
I think it's in here because of the self-mill theme.
Yeah,
that we've kind of all but eradicated.
Don't get me wrong. The activated ability on Tasigur is good if you need a mana sink, but in a mana dork deck, I mean, like, you're almost always getting a mana dork back. Like,
yeah, that's true. That's really true. I would. It's probably, honestly, Tasigur probably gets better the less self-mill you have.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty fine to cut it.
Yeah, I like Tasigur in more like mid-rangey kind of decks. I do think we do want to change the point spread. Like I said, I don't like crop rotation. Like crop.
What else do you want?
And Demonic Tutor is decent.
I mean, the other option is Moxes, pretty much.
Yeah, so that's what, like, we could, like, replace those with Mox Jite.
We could also cut, we could cut either Pod or Survival to go double Mox, or cut Natural Order. Maybe Prime Time is just better just to cast instead of ordering into.
I thought about that, to be honest.
Turbo Prime Time is kind of one of the ways this deck wins, though.
I want to keep to the spirit of the deck, at least to a certain extent, which is why I didn't want to cut Natural Order. Like, I don't really like Primetime Natural Order in general that much. Like,
you haven't done it.
I've done it. It's just not
clearly not. If you've done it, you would like it.
I don't think that it's good enough that it's worth the points over something else, is what I should say. Like, don't get me wrong, it's strong. But I think that using a card and a creature to get a prime time for 3 points there's better things to do.
I see what you're saying.
But because, like, I want to stay true to the spirit of the deck, so I don't want to touch that. He had mentioned he wasn't sure on DT crop rotation earlier, which is why those are the ones I'd be more likely to fiddle with.
Just something I noticed right now. There's green sense units, but no Dryad Arbor. I feel like we probably want that.
Oh, yeah. Especially because we're on Skull Clamp. Dryad Arbor is really good.
Yeah, fetching out a Dryad Arbor just to clamp it in like a mid-late game where you're kind of stalled out like is really good.
Got a green fetch and nothing to do with it. It's good. And we're on how many lands are we on now? 36? That's including the Dryad Arbor.
37 with the MDFC.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't tend to count that as a land. Usually I count that as a spell and it can be a land.
Yeah, I think that's plenty, especially if we end up adding a Mox.
Okay. I mean, it always feels weird to me to just play one Mox in this kind of deck that's trying to high roll. I guess this deck isn't really trying to high roll that same way because you get Dorks, and Dorks kind of help you high roll.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad to play just one Mox, to be honest.
Okay, well, we're probably playing, what? Green Mox?
Yeah. Let me sort the deck by color real quick.
Because Green Mox lets you play double Dork on one.
That's not why you're doing it. It's just because most of your deck is green. We're on 25 green creatures, 20 black, 7
It also
blue.
helps you activate
cards,
Scavengers and
rather.
Survival.
Yeah.
Scavengers and Survival activate off of it. It's just Fallen Shaman activates off of it. The Mox Emerald also is a land that you can sack. It's basically a land that you top deck and you can sack into Braids.
That's true.
I guess
That's
you can already sacrifice lands, but they probably have lands to sacrifice if they
yeah.
want to dodge, but they can't dodge artifacts nearly as easily. Usually, it depends what you go up against, of course.
Yeah.
So what we wanted GT?
Yeah. I think GT is good in the deck. I'm trying to think if there's.
I like GT. That seems nice.
Yeah.
We could. Let's see. We have Mox Emerald Skull Clamp. We could Saga on just those if you wanted to, though it would probably be worth going back to Haywire Mine if we do.
Yeah, that's true. If we do go to Saga, Haywire Might's good. I mean, our mana base can probably afford it.
I think it probably
and we're
can.
on prime time.
Additionally, this deck does a bit of spending life on stuff. We have Reanimate, Thoughtseize, Malakir Rebirth. We're spending life on, there's another thing, there's a creature that hurts you, right? Am I crazy? Oh, we cut that already, never mind. I'm just trying to think if we want, we could put in Shadow Spear as well, but we have a Shieldred to gain back life, an Uro to gain back life, a Thragtusk to gain back life. We have a lot of ways to gain back
Kitchen
life.
Finks, right?
Oh, I'm doing that now. So maybe we don't really need the Shadow Spear.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's good. So if we're on Mox, Clamp, and then Haywire Might, that gives options with Urza's Saga.
So what did we cut? Cankle Bloom or the Outland Liberator then?
I prefer Outland Liberator, personally.
Okay. You give up the point of power for the potential point of power plus repeatability?
Yeah.
And I agree that... I mean, I guess technically if we really wanted to, we could turbo through an Urza Saga by proliferating, but that doesn't really seem that good.
That my problem with the proliferate mode on Canker Bloom has always been that, like, there's not a ton of situations in which it's worth sacrificing it to proliferate. Like, the Artifactor enchantment, like, there's a lot of situations in which it's absolutely worth getting rid of your creature to destroy those. But with, like, the proliferate, it can, like, mess up combat math stuff if you've got, like, counters on a creature or something, and it can, like, tick up your planeswalkers, but...
Or make a GT really good.
Even then, though, like, adding a counter to a GT in exchange for a creature that could just... Like, you could just equip the GT to the Canker Bloom, attack, they block favorably, and then you get 2 counters on it.
That costs 2 mana to equip instead of 1 to proliferate. Okay, you're right. You're right. I think that the proliferate ability is more of a commander ability.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's irrelevant, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it's not
nearly
as much of an upside as it seems like it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems pretty simple to me. Okay, I mean, I'm pretty happy with the way this list is kind of forming up here. We got 2 cards to cut unless we need to add more. I'm leaning towards Hostage Taker, but I'm noticing we don't have Palace Jailer. We have Custodial Lich as some creature removal, but we don't really have, like, targeted creature removal because we're not in white and red. So, like, do we want to put in, like, Assassin's Trophy Abrupt Decay, or do we just, like...
No.
Keep the Hostage Taker?
We probably keep Hostage Taker.
Like, no one wants to kill a Hostage Taker when your deck is so full of other things they want to kill.
Yeah, also, I mean, we could potentially put a Ravenous Chupacabra in here.
That's a pretty legitimate one.
Because you're right, there are not a whole lot of great ways to kill creatures other than
That's
Hostage
another
Taker.
one to Ghostly Flicker. troops. Okay.
So now we have 3 cards to cut.
Yeah.
I
don't
would
think we can go
cut
down any
Aether
more lands.
Channeler.
Think so?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I agree that this deck splashes blue more than it is blue.
Yeah.
Fairy Mastermind's probably pretty good though.
No, you'd leave that for sure.
I think having we have Fairy Mastermind, we have Orchestra Masters, and we have Hull Breacher. And I think having a lot of ways to punish card draw is big because this deck loses to the decks that turn to their deck and find Wrath of God. I mean, it doesn't just straight lose to that, but like those are the kind of decks this deck doesn't necessarily want to fight, or decks that are combo killing you, which means they're drawing 40 cards in a turn. So I feel like you want to have a lot of ways to remove or to interact with that.
Yeah.
Okay. We want our Holy Trinity of hand attack, right?
I honestly don't like it that much in like Creature Toolbox decks, but it's like fine. I played it in the Abzan one that I played on Paperlander, and it was like decent.
Well, what about Unearth? Most of our stuff gets hit by it. Less than the build that we got, because we put a lot of 4s in.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what our curve looks like at the moment. Yeah, it
Reanimate stays.
It gets most of our stuff. I think Unearth is fine. Worst case scenario, you can cycle it.
Yeah. Grist is pretty obvious.
Grist
Brazen Borrower.
stays
What do you
for
feel about
sure.
Brazen Borrower? Like, it doesn't have an ETB effect, so potting into it doesn't do anything. But it's just efficient.
Brazen Borrower bounces Humility.
Brazen Borrower bounces Humility. You heard it here first. I'm here for it. Let's see. Where are you at on Diabolic Intent? It's a toolbox piece, but like, it's a lot worse than the ones you sack and get to put the card directly into play. Yeah. But it also goes and gets you. It can go and get you
anything.
A spell.
I like it.
It gets you Saw in half.
I keep looking at Mull Drifter and.
I think that's one of those things. It's like part of the spirit of the deck. I think he really wants to play Mull Drifter.
I think he
maybe
was
not
on Mull Drifter because of the
Undying Evils.
Undying Evils, and we
but we put
the deck of most of those.
But we put a Saw in half in here, and we put a Phantom Seed in here.
Okay,
you use both of those when they target
6 or 7 mana.
Your deck makes 6 or 7 mana.
Then do.
All right, fine. Goodbye, Mull Drifter. You'll make me sad. Hey, if anyone's building this deck and they're missing a card, put in Mull Drifter. All right, we got the good old 101. What are we cutting next?
Did we add a Mox? We did.
Yeah, Mox.
I think we can go down a land.
Okay. What do you want to just go down a snow-covered swamp?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, howdy do. We got 100 cards. The land base looks pretty fine. You're fine with Mana Confluence?
I didn't look at it too close. Oh, I don't like Mana Confluence.
Okay.
I don't think you need it. Yeah,
there's no Hinterland Harbor. I could put a Hinterland Harbor back in.
Are there any fast lands?
We have Botanical Sanctum, Blooming Marsh, and the last one would be Darkstick Shores? There's no Darkstick Shores, so I don't think there needs to be.
Yeah, I don't think we want Darkstick Shores anyway. Yeah, I didn't really look at the mana base at all.
What about Hinterland Harbor?
Yeah, you can just add Hinterland Harbor. I like that more.
I can't spell Hinterland Harbor. And then I need to change this Valley of Gorgoroth into Wasteland.
I mean, it is Wasteland, but sure. Did you add Urza Saga?
Oops.
Did you add the Might?
Yeah, I put the Might in. So I guess, do we want to cut continue to go down another snow-covered
I think we just take that Hinterland Harbor back out.
Well,
actually,
Hinterland
no, I
Harbor
do
is
think we
good.
cut more basics. I don't think we need this many basics. Well,
I mean, we're at 8 basics right now.
nah, take the Hinterland Harbor back out. We'll leave the 8 basics. Give us some game against Blood Moon.
We don't need that much blue mana for this deck.
Yeah, we don't. I think we don't need Hinterland Harbor.
Okay. Well, there we go. I'm pretty happy. Of course, this is the kind of thing where the list will look a little different in your meta, and
also,
you might make a few changes to match your play style, but I think this looks like a much more solid kind of, it knows what it's doing a little more than the previous list.
Yeah, and like we said, if you look at our list and you're like, well, that looks so much less fun. I wanted to play my five Undying Evils or whatever. Do it. By all means. This is...
I played Abzan Undying Evils, and it wasn't amazing, but it was very fun.
Yeah, sometimes it's just more fun to be doing better, cooler things. But I think this list is a lot more solid and has a lot less holes in the game plan.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. So, do you want to talk a little bit about what you played last time on Highlander?
Yeah, so I played the same deck that I played in the tournament that we did recently, and the deck felt wild, real good. I went 3-0. My first match was against Death and Taxes, and I went 2-1. This match was probably the least notable. I just kind of I think it's a pretty good matchup for me in general, and I just kind of killed him to death. Game 3, I got a turn 2 initiative creature, and it's just kind of how it goes. My second match was probably one of the best matches of Magic I've played in a really long time. We ended up going 1-0-1 in that match. Game 1 was insane. So turn 2, I went turn 1 Dork, turn 2 land, Eldritch Evolution my Dork into White Plume, and I thought, okay, the game's over. I can't lose. And then on his next turn, he cast True Night Nemesis. So already the game is wild, because now we spend literally the rest of the game trading the initiative back and forth, and we end up getting to a board state that I'm at 3, or if he can attack me down to 3, but then he's dead on the crackback if he does that. And part of the reason for that was because I completely whiffed on the Throne of the Dead 3 part of the initiative, which was quite unfortunate. I just didn't hit a creature. Actually, I think I hit... I'm trying to think what it was. I think I hit one creature, but it would have been bad for me to take it. I'm trying to think what the context was. I remember hitting a creature that I ended up not taking because it would have been negative for me. I can't actually remember what it was, to be honest. It might have been a Collector Oof, and I had, double mocks. And so, on his last turn, he's dead on the crackback. He manages to draw, or dig through about 11 cards looking for a lightning bolt, and he doesn't find it, so I'm able to get him on the crackback. And then game 2 was also really, really close. I wrote down less details about that, and I'm a little disappointed that I did, because that one was crazy intense as well. But we ended up going to time and drawing. But it was a really crazy grindy game as well. And then match 3, I was against a dope soldiers deck. It wasn't, huh?
I think the person playing that is the person we just did a deck doctor for.
Oh, look at that. Yeah. Well, it was dope. I mean, like, unfortunately, Soldiers is not a particularly good deck, so I managed to get there 2-0. But it was still, like, good Magic. Game 1, I managed to Opposition Agent his fetch on turn 2, and then that just tempo swing was enough for me to get there. And then Game 2, I played an Orcish Bowmasters, was able to, like, kill a thing, block a threat, and then next turn I reanimated it to kill another threat, and then I played a podded the Bowmaster into White Plume, and then in that same turn I Eldritch Evolutioned into Fury to wipe the board, and then
you just played played a series of events that explains why it's hard to make people play Highlander.
Yeah, it was a turn. And then I played a 4-drop initiative creature to go through the initiative again, and then I potted that creature into Kiki Jiki to copy Fury to wipe the other creatures that he played. It was bad. And then we played...
Wow, I shouldn't have interrupted. I should have finished your story.
Yeah. And then we decided, hey, we're gonna, for fun, we'll play Game 3. And I looked down at my hand of land Mox Ragavan and was just able to turn 1 dash a Ragavan in, and then won off of that. So I do apologize. Hopefully Dude. I made it up to you a little bit by helping with this deck.
That's brutal. That's brutal. Yeah, I played, last time, I played a Reanimator deck. It was 4-color. It was mostly, Grixis with a small white splash for, like, flashing back on Burial Rites, and I think it was that to Fairy, Time Raveler, and, like, one more thing. I think I might have played a Shorikai to discard Reanimate spells, or Reanimator targets. But... it was interesting. I think the deck needed a lot of work. I was considering playing it on our next episode of Paperlander, but because it just wasn't coming together quite right, and the poll was tied for another deck, I ended up deciding to go with the other deck. But I ended up going 1-2, though admittedly one of the matches I lost was kind of close. Round 1, I don't remember who I went up against. I don't remember who it was, but they were playing red-black Sacrifice, like not Aristocrats, but like the Sacrifice deck we showed off on one of our episodes of Paperlander. And really, I had some fine hands, but I just kind of got run over ridiculously fast, and I got Opposition Agented, and then couldn't do anything. So that match was pretty quick and demoralizing. Round 2, I went up against somebody playing something that I don't recall. And it didn't really matter that much what they were playing, because both games I got an Archon of Cruelty in play on like turn 2 or 3, and then they killed it, and then I reanimated it again, and then they killed it, and I reanimated it again, and then they died. That's kind of what the deck's supposed to do, is just slam an Archon and then win. And then match 3, I was against Sultai Control Oracle stuff. Game 1, I had lethal on board pretty much, and my opponent used a Demonic Consultation to try and find the Underground Sea, because they just hadn't had any lands, so I kind of got a free game. And we went through their whole deck and couldn't find it, and then realized we just missed it like halfway through, so it ended up not mattering because they were dead anyways. I had a counterspell. And then we played a pretty drawn out back and forth game in that match, and it was a tough fought battle, but I ended up losing the next 2. So I ended up 1-2, pretty close to 2-1, but the deck felt just kind of clunky and not streamlined enough for what we were going to be showing off. So I decided to go with a more tried and true deck. But Reanimator's cool, but sometimes you get your graveyard exiled. Okay, well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Deck Doctors. I believe this is our first Deck Doctor, right? Yes? Okay. Let us know in the comments, or if you're listening on podcast form, let us know on Discord if you liked this kind of thing, if you want to see more, if you have a deck you want doctored,
Good English.
doctored, yes. Let us know. Maybe we make a Discord channel specifically for deck doctor submissions. No promises they'll all get done. Depends on how many there are. But if this is the kind of thing you guys like, we'll do some more of these. And leave a comment, like all the stuff on YouTube, other places. Do the thing, tell your friends, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the 10 Points Podcast. And don't forget to count your points.